Okay, thank you. I timed this for 3 minutes, so I'll try to be quick. Good evening. I stand here today before you as a parent, an elected official, a taxpayer, and a registered voter. I know that your position is of public service and sometimes feels like a thankless one, so I do appreciate you for being here. In the beginning of this pandemic, I was actually in the hospital giving birth to my youngest and was able to get out of the hospital as everything started to go in lockdown mode. In the beginning, I was scared, just like most of you are or were. It has been a year and a half later. We have learned that masks do not reduce the spread of disease in children. In fact, we have seen firsthand using pulsometers that it lowers the oxygen intake, as well as countless studies supported by doctors and scientists that show that children and young adults do not know how to properly use PPE, and therefore having them wear it is rendered useless because a child or teen doesn't understand the concept of touching your hair, objects, food, surfaces, and then your mask. You have to be trained in infectious diseases or in a hospital setting to fully understand how to properly function with PPE so you are not cross-contaminating. My 4-year-old doesn't have this skill. There is no reason why my 4-year-old needs to go to school with a mask on. For every scientific study, I have witnessed this school board reference. I can find another one that contradicts it. I know you are acting on what you believe is the best interest of this community, but you are only following one side of science and listening to one group of parents. What is the difference in going out to eat or to a concert or even a store? Masks are not required in most places, and even the places that highly suggest that you wear one, most people aren't. I was just at Market Basket today and can tell you it's 50-50. This isn't a political statement I'm trying to make. I don't care whose side you're on or who you voted for. What bothers me is that Conval is a publicly funded educational institute. Right now, I pay out of pocket full tuition for pre-K, which is an extra $2,200. On top of half of my annual taxes go to this school district. The private bus company is funded with taxpayer dollars and isn't even an option to my son in pre-K unless he has an IEP.
My name's Alyssa, and I live in Peterborough. I'm once again here speaking on masks to be a choice for us as parents to make for our children. Like multiple things in life, things work differently for different kids and different families. I know families who strongly believe that their kids should be in a mask, and that's great. I respect that choice that they make as a parent. But I'm wondering why we can't all get the same respect and even get a choice. If we don't want our kids in a mask, we should have that option. I really struggle knowing my kids wear a mask daily. But what I get really mad at is knowing that we're failing them, letting them wear a mask outside. You can say it's a choice, but it's not. It's a fear that they're going to get in trouble to take their mask off outside. They're spoken to all day long to keep their face mask on properly. And then they go out for fresh air and they're petrified to take it off. These kids are 5, 6, 7 years old. They need reminders that it is okay for them to take a mask off outside. We are literally putting so much fear in these kids that they're scared to take them off. We need to do better at reminding them fresh air is actually really good for you. I try to remind my kids every morning at drop-off. Remember, it's okay to take your mask off outside at recess. But then they remind me that they don't want to get in trouble. To me, that's a problem that really needs to be addressed. The other thing we need to remember is allergies are going to start. With season changes coming, but now instead of letting them go to school with normal allergy symptoms, they're sitting at home with the sniffles, even though they've had negative COVID tests. Missing days and days of school, all because they have the sniffles. We're putting so much unnecessary fear in these kids to make them think having allergies or a head cold is a horrible thing.
question was whether he could make a comment. I said, no, generally we don't do that during public comment. If the board would like to overrule my decision on that, obviously, that is.
I do remember in the past, not related to comments, that we have extended the time.
Sorry, I didn't think that was the moment. I took it as people want to.
Yeah, I think
I want to ask, as non-comment to these people, I want to ask you a question. So clarification with superintendent? Yeah. Sure. So because what I believe is about it, that's what I'm asking. And can you hold those to the part where we get to the agenda item that covers the reopening update, where all of these stuff about COVID protocol and all of that will go? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Go ahead, please again introduce yourself and where you're from, and I will then start your timer.
Okay. My name is Erin Nolan, and I am from Peterborough. I'm once again here asking for choice of masking to be considered. I stand with the other ladies and in the points I have made before here. All we are asking for is the choice. I understand that COVID is here, and I respect it's not going anywhere. But we need, as parents, for our children to be able to make this choice for them the same way that many other parents are making the choice to have their children masked. I will also make a side comment in regards to the lack of substitutes. I myself would substitute, but I refuse to substitute all day wearing a mask. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment? All right, hearing none, seeing none. The next thing on our agenda is a period of non-public session for purposes of negotiation and legal.
I move that we go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A32 for legal and negotiations.
Moved by Rich, second by Catherine. Sorry.
Would you just stop by Brenda and make sure she has your name and
Where's
your
Brenda?
place, Ashley? Right, Brenda, right here. On your way by, would you just stop and tell her where you live and your full name?
Right now,
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I didn't want to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Well, it takes us a minute to clear the room. Tim? All right, great. So we are back out of non-public. Catherine, your motion, please.
Sure, I move to seal the non-public minutes under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, for a period of 10 years.
Second.
Moved by Catherine, second by Rich. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The minutes are sealed. Thank you very much. With that, I will also, as I was asked, to remind board members to make sure you're speaking into your mics for the folks on the live stream, and that you do remember to unmute your mic when you speak. With that, we are on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening has 3 different items. The first are the meeting minutes of September 7th, 2021. The second is a retirement notice that we have, and the co-curricular notifications as well. Is there any objections to the items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Next is the superintendent's report and presentation of business reopening update. Superintendent.
Sorry, thank you. So we have new DHHS guidance. Our plan does say that we will follow New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services guidance. So I am just looking to see if you guys have any questions regarding that. And if you have, this is the piece that says we will, when a child is, or when a household, rather than just randomly quarantine children, what we do is if it's only about household contacts. So either child is positive or a household contact is positive. So close contact. So if I had close contact with a child in school, I do not necessarily have to quarantine. Household contacts, so people who live in the same household as another child or as a positive. So if a parent tested positive and they weren't able to self-isolate, the child would need to quarantine. So that is the extent. That is if the child is not, or the other person, I shouldn't say child because some of it is staffing, is not vaccinated. If the student is student or adult is vaccinated, then they do not have to quarantine. They can come back to school. We recommend that they obviously talk to their pediatrician and that they get tested in 3 to 5 days from their last known exposure. So, questions?
Alan. Thank you.
Just to clarify, you said you had 5 cases today.
7.
7.
Make sure you're green.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You said we had 7 cases. How do we actually know that we have 5 active cases?
So usually the parents let us know or the staff member lets us know
Okay.
directly.
So it is coming from the parents to let us know that somebody has tested positive.
Yes.
in the
Yes.
Okay.
Kira.
Household contacts, does that extend also to if a student has a sleepover with another student who then tests positive, and or if in a split household, the student goes to a parent on one weekend and then comes back? Would that also follow those same rules?
So the household contacts as far as a split household do apply, but the sleepover piece is not, it is not our understanding that that applies to the sleepover part.
Rich and then Catherine.
So the vaccine out of quarantine card, right? Does it involve actually demonstrating vaccination?
So yeah, so we ask people to demonstrate that they're vaccinated.
Catherine.
Does the state assist with contact tracing, or is that solely up to the school district?
So the state is not asking necessarily for close contacts in cases like, for instance, if we have a case here, like we have a case at AES or a case at Pierce, they aren't asking for close contacts. They aren't asking for close contacts until we've had three cases or more in a certain amount of time, and then in the same building. And then they are doing some contact tracing. But as far as we know, at this point, the state is no longer doing that contact tracing outside for the schools outside of that, which is why we have started working with our local health officials to help us do that the contact tracing.
Rich?
I don't want to step on Greg if he was about to ask this, but the masks outside thing. I'm correct. I think that masks outside are not required, right?
Masks outside are not required at any time.
And at the end of last year, though, there might have been some kids who didn't realize it wasn't required.
Mhm.
Can we? Are we making sure that kids understand that the masks are optional outside, and if not, can we somehow make sure that they understand that masks outside are optional?
So we have been working on that. So several schools, there are still 3 schools and the high school that do not actually have signage up yet that says, remember, masks out, you don't have to wear your mask outside. But all of the other schools do have those signs up already. And SMS has had them all made, and those are going up tomorrow.
Dr. Kriebel?
Thank you, Rich. That was one of my questions, and I would also like to piggyback on what he said. Can we please ask the staff to remind students, signage is great, but if we could remind the students they do not have to wear their masks outside, because they need free time, they need fresh air, and I think that's the right
We
thing
can
to do.
absolutely ask staff to continue to do that. Right now, I
Perfect.
would remind the board that we are asking staff to
do a lot of things, I understand.
lot, and to ask that, and yes, they work to remember, but just, you
Yep.
know, they're doing the best they can in circumstances that they never ever thought they would find themselves in.
And may I also seek clarification, as far as I know, if someone tests negative, they do not have to sit home with a runny nose. If they test negative, they are allowed to return to
They
school,
can-
correct?
Absolutely. So we take we take rapid tests, we take PCRs, or the cessation of symptoms.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but if I write a note saying someone has allergies and they're on allergy medicines, that is also gets them back into school as
That
well.
is absolutely true, Dr. Kriebel.
Thank you.
If we have it on record that so several kids have different things. So some kids get really bad headaches, some kids have allergies. We have that on record. If we don't have it on record and somebody writes a note, we're happy to take that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this particular topic relative to the DHHS guidance?
You're gonna accept the DHS as
I'll,
our new go-to?
I mean, I think our plan says we do.
Yes,
so
it does.
if you can correct me if I'm wrong, the opinion of the chair is our policy says we will follow DHHS guidance. So unless there's an overwhelming conflict between that and CDC guidance, which we also say we would follow, I'm not sure we have to, but I'm more than willing to entertain a motion if the rest of the board feels we have to do so. Rich?
Could you just you characterize what sort of a mix of what we have been doing and will be doing? Could you just tell us in 3 bullet points what the change today is?
So the change would be that we would only consider household contacts as contacts that would need to quarantine for that
Okay,
time.
So this is
And-
the
and
change
they would be
Dr.
It-
Chan
only
said,
if, yes. So
like
this is
8 weeks ago he was going to make, and now we're just
yes, and last week he officially made that change, so now we can move forward. And that would be for unvaccinated. Vaccinated would not need to quarantine. Okay. So also associated to the reopening plan. So I pledged to the community and to all of you that I would be absolutely transparent when we had a case. The letter would go out to the entire community. Some people are finding that rather annoying. I am happy to continue doing that. I don't know if the board wants to shift. It is unrealistic for us, and I think I said this at the beginning of this year, it'd be unrealistic for us to think we weren't going to have positive cases. However, I'm wondering if doing it is we are getting, both Ann and I, because Ann does them sometimes and I do them sometimes, letters back like, please unsubscribe me, which we can do or they can do. And then we're also, so I'm worried about desensitizing people when it is important for them to realize that there is a case in their school, because people are just going, oh, I'm just not going to read any more letters from her. But then on the other hand, I'm worried about people not feeling like we're being transparent. So I'm happy to do either way. I'm looking to the board for guidance on if you would like me to send those out building based or continue to do them district based.
I'd like to make a motion that we change our communication to school-specific communication, so school-based in this case, so it's continuing to be transparent to the community that it affects, but maybe it's not overwhelming to other communities 20 miles away.
I second that motion.
Moved by Catherine, second by Dick, to limit the COVID notifications by.
Greg.
Oh, sorry, by Greg. Sorry, I was looking in that general direction. Peripheral vision be damned. For COVID notifications to be building based. Discussion. Kira.
Would we be comfortable maybe modifying that motion to include towns affected by some of the larger communities or larger schools, in the sense that if there's a case at GBS, those of us who have, people in the community that attends GBS want to know that as well, even if we don't have a student who attends GBS.
I don't think I would hold that because I think there's a clarifying question. I'm guessing our database isn't
I'm
that
not sure our
geographic
our school
specific.
messenger is actually,
It's school based,
able
not
to-
a geographic based would be my guess.
I'm sure we could, we could probably make that happen though.
But sorry, so
So I
Catherine.
made the motion so we could start the discussion.
Great.
And then give the superintendent direction after the board weighs in and gives our consensus as to what we think is best. I think transparency is really important. I think not desensitizing people is important. However, I think that if there was a case in one end of the district, I mean, we're 20, 30, I mean, how many miles apart? So I think people have some COVID fatigue as well. And I'm worried that if they unsubscribe to the superintendent's emails, we might miss them when there's other important,
Like
not
snow days.
COVID-related messages that come out, and that's a possibility too. So I don't want to downplay the severity of the cases. I just am looking for a discussion so we can figure out what's best for our district.
Kevin, then Rich.
Our plan calls for our metrics to be regionally based. Well, not all of them, but regionally based. And I've actually assumed that the emails that we've gotten, living in a town that I don't think has gotten any at our school. So I've been getting GBS, Conval High School, but I've been getting everybody else's elementary schools too. I assumed that informed me about the region, and that we were supposed to care about what the volume is in the region, or have some semblance of a regionalness to the data. So I'm skeptical about limiting it just to your town or your school.
Rich.
So I think we could handle Kira's concern just by saying, because we're really just talking about the middle schools here, right? Elementary school, everyone's got their own one. High school, everyone goes to the same one. We're talking about if you live in Bennington
doing it.
you want to know about a case at Great Brook, even if your kid's at Bennington Elementary School. So couldn't we just send that to any GBS notification goes to the four sending towns at GBS?
I'll have to look with the,
The nor-
database. I don't know that contacts work exactly that way.
Okay. And the other question, or not question, I guess comment, part of the desensitizing piece, I think, might be that they look very, the notice is the same each time, which it has to be at some level. But a lot of it is, we've seen the assurance about the DHHS process and all of that at this point 15 times or whatever.
You know, and I agree with you,
Yeah.
but you say that, but then I've had people just recently say, "Can I ask these questions about your letter?" And so I agree with you, because I've been like, "Oh my goodness, they're getting the same letter. They're gonna stop reading after 3 letters." But interesting enough, yeah.
And I'm mentioning it only because I agree a bit with Kevin. If we could somehow avoid desensitizing people while not encouraging head in the sand, because it doesn't actually hurt me any to get an extra email every few days. I just delete it. So I kind of want to have a picture somewhere, if it's not in these emails, then somewhere else, of what the district looks like at the moment.
that was my question earlier. Sorry, Kevin. And it was there a way to post that information, the district-wide information could be posted, that way you could then do the individual notices. Kevin?
I had 2 suggestions about the email. One is, and I made up my own short version that I include in my own postings. And I'm wondering if you could have a shorter version that then said, and here's a link to go to if you want to review what the guidelines are that are applied in these cases, so that it's really a paragraph that just acknowledges that there are cases and we're following the protocols,
I'm happy
And
if
we
you-
not spell out all those protocols. And the second thing is, I was wondering if we could signpost the emails so that they actually identified information in the signpost, as in additional cases at GBS, additional cases at CVHS.
I only have so many characters, which is actually why it changes. So like important information, or then sometimes it just
okay.
says DCS, PC, because I only have so many characters in that.
Alrighty.
It's not a super robust system. Usually it just says snow day. So, as far as the regional data, so I have been working with the person that designed last year's data dashboard to help. They are just like everybody else. They're so backed up. Those conversations started in mid-August, and we just finally got our statement of work from them to get that done, and we will be putting that back up. But we are just like we did last year. We have that mass of data that we are collecting and reviewing with the COVID monitoring team. And we'll get that back up online as soon as we get that back from them.
So the motion on the floor, as I have it, is to limit those emails on a school-based basis? No,
I can
I mean-
withdraw my motion. I'm just looking
No,
for
no,
the
I
consent.
appreciate the motion for the discussion. Is there any other discussion on that particular topic or suggestion at this point? Hearing none, seeing none, do you wish to retain your motion and we can vote or not? Sure. All right, so all in favor of limiting the emails to schools, raise your hands. I show 2. All in favor of retaining the current distribution method? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see 6. 7. Thank you, Jim. All opposed?
Okay.
None. So we will retain the all district notification, though. Yep, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So also around the plan. So as you know, we submitted the plan to the state of New Hampshire Department of Education, first in late May and again in early August. we did that so that people in the communities could send us feedback and that we could get, we could do the surveys and all of those pieces. Neither time did we get any comments back from the Department of Education. Recently, we received an email from when I say we, I mean all of the superintendents, business administrators, and assistant superintendents in the state of New Hampshire. And it just said that they're barring a state of emergency from the governor, that we didn't have the option to move to an all remote model. Now, you will recall that our yellow phase talks about having some students in and some students remote, and we had been preparing to do that if necessary. The kind of place that we start looking at the yellow phase in our plan is at 500 in the Monadnock Greater the Public Health region. We are at 446 as of yesterday. And that's an average amount of active cases or new cases, excuse me, over the last 14 days. So what has happened, and it is our legal counsel's belief that we actually can still, you as the local governing body of the school district can make the decision to move to a different phase of the program. However, I will tell you that the Department of Ed is moving very quickly to close the loop that allows that to happen. So we are in the situation where we have two things going on. One, we do not have a mid-phase where we can say a school, so if a school has an outbreak or a school has something, we don't have a kind of middle phase to try and tamp things down and then bring students back in. And I am growing concerned about when we are asking students to quarantine that we don't necessarily have an option for them. So we've got these two pieces going on at the same time. So my recommendation to the board is that, and again, we've talked about this at the beginning of the year, that you guys give me some, I don't have the staff right now to get a remote program up and running. And the board has basically voted that we won't spend any money towards setting any kind of remote programs up outside of the yellow and or red phase. So I'm coming to you saying, what is it you want me to do? Because I've got students and I'm looking at the numbers right now, and I will tell you that the number of students that are out, not out because they have the sniffles or anything like that, but the number of students out is higher right now than it is typically at this time of year. When that's happening, they're out for a longer amount of time than they typically would be recovering from a common cold. So I am concerned that they're losing instruction. So I am looking to you to either help me get some dollars together or allow me some dollars in the budget that I can start to move forward and put some sort of parallel plan together for students to access. But we don't really have a yellow phase, or we're not going to have the possibility of a yellow phase, and we also don't have any kind of parallel remote instruction for students who are missing days of school.
Rich.
Since we don't have funds allocated for a remote plan, since we don't have funds allocated for a remote program and don't have the staff available to staff a remote program, last year we hired an additional, ended up being 14 people?
Just about.
Shouldn't we focus on what we could do that would, mitigation steps, further mitigation steps we could take in the schools that didn't require us to go remote? Can we look again at at the distancing thing or something like that, rather than looking at remote options.
So, there would be, at this point, we would not be able to, because all of the people that are sitting in that back row on this kind of side we've already been looking at this. There is no way to increase our social distancing without adding staff. It's just not going to happen. Now, we can bring the plexiglass back. There are definitely mitigation that we can increase mitigation strategies. Again, I would point to what our local health officials are finding as their contact tracing, and that is that a lot of this is coming into school, not going out of school. So our mitigation strategies are more effective than less. Can we add layers of mitigation? Absolutely. We still have kids out of school because they're COVID positive,
Kevin, Catherine?
or because they have close
Do
household
you
contacts
have a
that are positive.
recommendation for us?
I would need to work with staff to come up with a recommendation, but if I can't spend money, it's going to be really hard for me to get anything off the ground.
But couldn't you recommend
Oh, you want
Wait.
an amount?
a way to spend money?
You want me to tell you how I'm going to spend the money, or you want me to tell you how much I think I'm going to need?
And where you would get it? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, it's already in the budget.
Alrighty.
So, and I think I need, to start, I need $100,000. I need $100,000 for staffing, for additional technology, and for redoing hotspots, so reopening our hotspot pieces.
Catherine?
I guess I just want to loop back around as the superintendent's going to come back to us with a recommendation and the costs and where we're going to get it from. Because if the state closes the loop and requires the 5-day learning, where does that put anything that we're trying to do as far as being in conflict with the state, even though we're a local governing body with local control?
Well, and not because I'm not concerned about that, I am concerned about that. But what I am most concerned about right now are students who are quarantined because they are either ill or they have a household contact that is ill, and then they're not in school for 10, 15 days. So, students who are becoming sick are, when they test positive, they are out of school for 10 or 15 days. And sometimes they're not able to access their learning because they're too ill. But in cases when they're not, we need to work to educate them. So those are the dollars that I'm talking about right now.
Dr. Kriebel?
So, would this not fall under acute loss of learning? In which case, couldn't we use some of the things we put in place, or some of the dollars that we put in place for lost learning to help some of these students? Seems to me if someone is out 10 days, that's a loss of learning, a loss of learning opportunity, and we've spent some money for that and we put some things in place. Could we not use some of those resources for this?
So, okay, so I'm going to do a really fast explanation. The fastest way to recover learning is to not lose it in the first place. And so we have a group of students that we are moving along because they are recovering learning that they lost last year. So now you're talking about adding to either students who exacerbating learning that some students lost last year, or adding to the group of students that we are trying to move along. Either way, that calls for resources that we may or may not have. What I'm trying to do is get ahead of any more learning loss.
I understand that. What I'm suggesting is that maybe some of those resources, we look at using them not using them, like you said, preventively, to prevent learning loss. If someone is out, gonna be out 10 days, we know they have to be out 10 days, more if they stay sick longer.
So you're saying move those, so.
So I'm saying that use
Swing
a
the
resource that say, all right, we're gonna teacher X who's helping with the remote learning is going to contact Joey who's out for 10 days to work, see how he's doing on his getting his assignments and checking in on him to see what we can do to help him move along. That's what I'm suggesting.
Right, so first I would have to check the grant because I'm not even sure that that's allowable because all of those are federal dollars, so I'd have to look into that, which is fine. But you're still talking about swinging those resources from one group of students to potentially a different group of students.
Kevin and then Alan.
How are you able to distinguish kids who are out because of COVID-related illness and kids who just may not be coming to school?
Because the children that we're talking about are people who have called and said, mom had COVID positive and now we're quarantining that child for 10 days.
But I assumed you had an answer. But
Yeah.
The basis of my question was, you said the number of students out is higher now than it typically is at
Yes.
that point at this point in the year. I was wondering if there's any chance that some of that is what we were being told by some parents, which is, my kid's not coming to school if he has to wear a mask.
No, these are sick children.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was not clear on that clearly. No, these are children who are ill. These are not children. So that's, we're tracking students who are ill and not students who are
Okay.
not coming to school because they have to wear a mask, which while we certainly have parents that are frustrated with us about the mask rule, generally they have continued to send their children.
Well, that was my impression up till this point, so
Yeah.
that's why I was asking the question.
Alan.
Just so I'm clear, you're actually looking for guidance from the school board for an actual and close to immediate implementation of a remote type school? Is that what you're looking for?
I'm looking to try to, yes, so
Just clear like
for a
that.
quick, yes. Something that I can implement with students who are out of school because they are quarantined,
Immediately, yeah.
right, immediately. And Greg is right, we could swing resources, that we could do that, but swinging those resources, one, I have to check the grant.
I don't get it.
And your job would be,
Try to make that work, but two, if I swing it one way, then I've got other students who aren't getting, unless they happen to be the same kids.
and within that guidance, you would in turn then develop options to deal with this if there were options
Yes,
to present back to the board.
yes.
Okay.
Rich.
So the new guidance from the state, from DOE, not from DHHS, interestingly, in a sense doesn't matter too much to me personally because, well, I'm aware of our ethical obligation to not predetermine how we're going to vote on things. It was always going to be, for me, a really, really heavy lift to get me to vote to send kids remote again anyway. So I'm much more concerned about trying to keep them, doing whatever we can to keep them in.
Mhm.
And now I'm going to say something which I'm sure will be unpopular, but I'm going to say it anyway. I draw a distinction between parents who have an option that keeps them from having to quarantine kids and parents who don't have that option. As a parent of a 10-year-old, I have no option available to me that keeps me from having to quarantine my child if I get sick. But as a parent of a 13-year-old, I do have an option, which is my 13-year-old could be vaccinated before this happens. And so I would like us to focus on the elementary schools because I feel like the elementary schools, we might have a little bit more possibility of spreading kids out and keeping them in the building.
In 6 of our 9 towns, fewer than half of the eligible 12 to 19-year-olds have exercised that option. Kevin.
What are the numbers we're talking about, ballpark? How many kids need to be served
You know, I would
how-
actually have to, because that number changes every day, so I
Right, but
if
you must have
I have
based
7
up
right now at
100,000
elementary school.
spitball on something, right?
Right. So I would say at any given time, we're looking between 7 and 15 K to 12. We're not talking about a lot of children. And I'm hoping in October, by the end of October, we're going to be going down, right, Dr. Kriebel?
Is that heavy to high school, or is it balanced?
Actually, it's pretty balanced, believe it or not. Right now it's heavy towards elementary, but you know, two weeks ago was heavy towards middle school.
Dick,
Yeah, my question, Kimberly, would be this option for some kind of reach out, whatever that might look like, would be for students who are home due to COVID,
Yes.
either personally within their family, but it would not be open to any other student.
No, the goal is to meet the needs of the children who are out for COVID.
That's what I'm clarifying. So for
You know,
14 students who might be out at any given time, there would be an option for them to be able to provide instruction directly to them in their home because of a COVID issue. Okay, thank you.
Can I just qualify that with saying, if a child came and, you know, was immunocompromised and there was an outbreak or something going on at that school, and the parents came to me and asked, could you please do this for my child? I would say yes. Because if that child was so immunocompromised that they couldn't go to school, I would ask for a doctor's note. But if there were 9 cases at that child's school, and as a parent, they came and said, you know, Larry, can little Susie please go remote until this calms down? I would feel an ethical obligation to say yes to that parent.
Again, that's COVID related,
Yes.
so I get it, and I'm not having an issue with that.
Okay.
Alan,
Yeah, just one more clarification. This would not be something that we would be looking for an individual student to be a long-term type thing. This would be only within a fixed amount where they were required to stay.
Yes.
As a
Well, unless they
remote
got
school.
long haul or something like
I'm
that.
sorry?
Unless the doctors are saying they have long haul, they can't
Oh,
come
sure.
to school,
Oh,
something, you know,
understood that.
something
Yeah,
that,
but the basic thing is that we'd be looking at this unlike what we looked at before as a short-term solution
yes.
to not having a good learning environment. And also, we would be able to establish, I think as Dick was saying, a fixed criteria for children to actually take advantage of this. This is not an open type thing.
No, that's.
Okay, cool.
Jerry,
In the past, when you've had students who've been out sick for a certain extended period of time, do you use you would have used homebound instructors to facilitate, right?
Yep.
So why could we not come up with some plan similar to that if a family has to be quarantined or a child has to be quarantined?
Because I would probably not,
Want to send, I mean, would.
wait, I would have, the CVEA would probably push back on me asking a member to go into an act.
Not to go to the house, but.
Oh, no,
could
that's
there-
exactly what we're talking about, is to have a person who is doing the homebound instruction.
Okay,
Yes.
but it would be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
They would be doing it remotely.
And that would, and how much would something like that cost?
Well, it depends on how many people I can
Yeah, I
find,
mean-
if I'm being honest. And we know that, you know, I quoted about $100,000 because we're talking about salary, benefits,
So you're talking about.
right, you're talking,
Kevin?
well, the hotspots are secondary to the salary.
So are you looking for a motion, since I'm the one who asked you, what's your recommendation? Are you looking for a motion to authorize you to create a homebound instruction program for students who are
Remote.
quarantined due to
Right.
COVID?
The key term here is remote, because you specifically took a vote
Yeah.
that said no remote. So now I'm asking for something remote. You have to
Though that's
proactively.
that's a pretty dull tool. a more precise tool would be to modify that to
Exactly.
offer you the option of creating a homebound instruction program for a specific group of students, right?
You got to put the word remote in there, because if I do
Yeah.
something remote,
Sure.
you guys actively took a
A home
vote
Yeah,
that
yes.
said no remote, Kimberly.
Yeah.
So I need you to
Well,
undo.
I think what
Please
we
for
I think what we
something.
said I think what we said was no remote school, because that was the phrase that kept being used, was to create a remote school. In this case, you're talking about a program for temporary homebound instruction remotely for students
That's fine.
who have COVID.
As long as you say it that way, that
And,
sounds great.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yep.
Okay, I make such a motion for the purpose of discussion.
Second that.
Moved by Kevin, second by Dick. Discussion. Additional discussion.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jim. No, wait, hold on. 1 second. Dr. Forrest, can you unmute your mic? Nope, don't remove that. Mute, make that live and put that. Perfect. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Jim.
Kimberly, assuming we approve this, how soon, are you asking for permission to start? Are you ready to go? You already have an idea you want to implement? Or do you want our approval to go ahead and come back to us and with a actual plan?
No, I want to advertise and start hiring homebound tutors.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Forrest. No, not Jim. We still want Jim. Additional comments, discussion. Catherine.
So does a dollar amount need to be attached to the motion at this time?
That would put an upper limit on it, sure. Kevin?
Well, I thought my motion represented what you had said, so I assumed the 100 grand was
Upper limit.
the amount we were talking about.
Hold on. Dick?
Oh, that's why I was seconding it, because I believe that was the original question.
Thank you, Dick.
Yes.
Catherine?
I just want to capture that amount in the motion then, so it's clear in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure. So, Kevin, if you could try once again on your motion.
Nice, Tim.
Thank you. I mean, I don't want to get it wrong. The board, the chair would gladly entertain an attempt, but you're much more eloquent than I.
Yeah. I move that we authorize the superintendent to spend up to $100,000 to create a homebound instruction program that is remote for students with COVID.
Close. Or, not just with COVID. Quarantine is a,
Quarantining due to COVID?
Thank you.
Quarantining due to COVID.
Second.
got it, Brenda? Thank you. Catherine?
So where do you anticipate the budget has the flexibility for the $100,000?
Yep.
Thank you.
This is going to come from this.
Additional discussion.
I'm curious, Rich, if you want to limit this to students 11 and under.
You can answer that question. I mean, that's outside.
No, I don't. What I was suggesting was that we take whatever additional steps are possible at the elementary schools to keep kids from going remote to start with, because I don't have an option to protect my 10-year-old. So.
Nor do I. Catherine?
Just one more clarifying question. These are temporary
These are-
positions for this
would be
year?
temporary for ending.
Well, let's just
I
say this
hope
year.
at the end of the year, forever
Thank
and
you.
ever.
Thank you.
Additional, Alan?
I just don't understand, I mean, within the criteria that we're giving Kimberly to do this, why we are arbitrarily setting a dollar amount to this when we've already set the criteria. Since the dollar amount is really arbitrary and we don't know what it's going to take to do, as long as you go with the criteria that we have established, then the dollar amount is going to have to be there.
So putting a dollar amount in a motion and a vote with the board would require the superintendent to come back to us if the district hit that to say, I need more. It's a way of showing some constraint upon that.
I think it's arbitrary, but okay.
I think that's, that's perfectly within our authority to do that, and I think it's perfectly responsible. Jerry?
Would you have to hire full-time people to do this, or could you just do per diem,
I'm hoping one full and one half, or one part, and one full, which is where the $100,000 actually comes from when you consider retirement and salary and benefits and all of those things, so.
Okay.
Now I do have another question.
Rich? See, there's always more
I didn't think I
questions.
had another question, but now I do. Can this be a contracted service?
Great question.
That is a wonderful question. I would love for it to be a contracted service provider.
Could it be a contracted service provider instead of,
So I can definitely look for someone to contract services.
additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Approved. Thank you, Superintendent.
Okay, in your packets, you see the rest of the September and the beginning of October. Is there anything else that you guys feel we need to do next week that's not already on the calendar? I would remind the audience at home that our community forum is at the high school. We believe that the Lucy Harlan Theater will be full, but we will have overflow into the cafeteria. So if you would like to attend. Anything in the first week of October that needs to be added to the calendar?
Tim?
Sorry, Catherine.
I just want to reiterate the policy committee meeting may or may not, I'm not able to be here that day, so.
On the 5th?
On the 5th. So if we don't have enough attendance, I've already spoken to the superintendent, so that's a question mark.
So I'm probably I could, do you want to cancel or do you want me to step into that role for that meeting? Is there a sense of the committee?
Kevin won't be there.
So you're short. That you'd lose.
I thought we only had 2 people who were going to be there.
Yeah.
So we'll cancel that one then?
So I think we should cancel that
Okay.
meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else that first week? The second week? The third week? And the final week?
Rich?
Not additional, but I just want to check with the equity committee. We're likely to have invited guests, and I think we might want to adjust that to their schedule if necessary. So we might start a little later, but we wouldn't start any earlier. Could that work? I just want to make the only 2 agenda items for the next equity committee meeting both involve other people, and so we may flex that time a little, and we'll let you know at the October 5th school board meeting.
Thank you, Rich.
And you can see,
Sorry. Dr. Forrest?
Sorry, I'm confused. We have the September 28th Equity Committee meeting.
Okay. so
Isn't that the
invited
meeting
guests
we
will
were
both be there
inviting
at that
them
one?
to?
Well, no, the September 20, the one at the end of September is starting at 5:30, right?
Yes.
And we just talked about it just before this. Some people may come, but some may not be able to, and would go into
I was
the
going
next
to look
meeting.
into that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's all it was.
Okay.
I'm just saying, be flexible on the time, and because I don't think we want to go past October to have those 2 conversations. So if 5:30 doesn't work, we'll do it at 6:30 or whatever. Yeah, it's
Okay.
all right, and also in your packet was where we are with enrollment as of yesterday. One of the things that is we're changing just a little is we have ATC students, and we have we're not entirely positive if those students were or were not counted in over the years in the total enrollment. So we have separated them out so you can see the total enrollment at the high school with ATC and without ATC students. So our total
thank you.
enrollment as of right now is 2086.
Thank you, Superintendent.
And obviously, we always look forward to the October 1 enrollment number. And that is all for my report.
Thank you. Do we have a teacher's representative tonight? No. She left. Thank you. Communications Committee, Alan.
I did it again, didn't I?
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Budget and Property, Jim.
Four items we talked about. I'm going to talk briefly about two of them because the other ones we'll be covering when we get to another action item on the agenda. The solar project, we asked for an update, and I can't see if Tim's in the room.
He is.
Maybe Lori can comment in terms of where are we on the solar project. Whether I think there was some discussion about whether there's a delay in material, which would delay the installation of the equipment. Do we have an answer on that? Do you know?
Hold on just a second, Jim.
Yeah, Jim, I did email revisions. I heard back from the project manager and Dan Weeks. They are waiting on some electrical engineering and lining up delivery of components. So as soon as I heard back from the electrical engineer, we would know a start date.
Okay, great. We'll be talking later about budget guidance and the capital improvement plan. The other thing we talked about of note is including the technology plans in the budget and property agenda to the same extent that we track capital improvement expenditures. But the more significant thing we talked about, I think it was Catherine that suggested that we add a technology trust fund to our mix of trust funds and start funding that. So we don't need to talk about that right now, but that is one of the items that was suggested, and we might very well want to pursue that. So that's it in terms of the report out.
Thank you, Jim. The next would be technically mine, except the stars definitely did not align last Thursday, resulting in 3 of the board members being unable to make the Strategic Planning Committee meeting because some days that's just how things happen. So I don't know if anyone that was there wants to shed any light on what did occur, but apologies to all of you for everything that happened last Thursday.
Well, Kevin was kind enough to move along the meeting. And do you want to report or do you want me to? Okay, so we really looked hard at the process of how we are going to work in those subcommittees. And so the Strategic Plan Steering Committee, for lack of a better way to put it, did adopt that process. So that we could get that work started. All the meetings for the strategic planning committees have been scheduled. There was a little back and forth about times. Unfortunately, times are not ideal. And for the people that are chairing the committees, there were multiple people who need to be at multiple committee meetings. And that meant that they needed to kind of mesh together. So there are like 3 meetings that are actually, or at least 2 meetings that are happening at the same time that involve 3 of the same people that we're going to put in different rooms and have people rotate in and around. But to make that happen, those times are really hard. The other piece was the push and pull with particularly teaching staff or athletic staff, and being able to capture staff as well as community members. So that was some of the things that we discussed.
Thank you both and everyone else that was able to attend. Education Committee, Dr. Allman isn't here, but Dick?
I'm sure. I told Dr. Ullman I'd fill in for him. We talked about our proposed timeline for education meetings for the full school year. We came to agreement on that. We also was shared with us and with board members the assessment schedule for the 21-22 school year, which you all have. You can find it in your response from the SAU. We also talked about the House Bill 320 U.S. citizenship test that students of 2023, 2024 must pass. A mandate from the state with no funding. It has a familiar ring to it, at least to me. The high school presented a process of addressing this within their program of studies as it is now, and it was commendable. So I tip my hat to the high school for addressing this and doing it in a way that'll be effective for students and not punitive for students, and it'll be beneficial to them. I would encourage anyone out there to go online and take the U.S. citizenship test and actually see if you can pass it. You might find it challenging. The other thing we talked about, which to me is a concern as a board we need to address tonight, is a requirement for a half credit for community service that is in policy but has never been in the course of studies. So it was discovered, and Ann brought it to our attention. At this point, my recommendation from the committee is that we suspend the half credit for community service until the high school can bring a recommendation to us. If we do not do that, we will be penalizing our present seniors on something they have no control over and no fault of their own. So I would like to make a motion that we suspend the half credit for community service until we have a recommendation coming through policy and the high school on how we address this.
I second that.
Moved by Dick, second by Kira. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Thank you, Jim. Abstained? Passes. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank the high school and Ann for bringing this forward to us and give us an opportunity to address it. And the high school is way ahead of the curve. They already have some great ideas they're going to bring forward, and I'm very confident that we'll find a way to address this in a way that'll address what we as a board have looked at, students giving back to the community. So thank you both for that. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Dick. Policy, Catherine.
So the policy committee met this evening. Thank you, Kevin, for getting the meeting started. Policy DN, school property disposal procedure, will be coming before the board for a first read. Lori worked to bring us a policy that would be set a higher standard and be more clear as to how this procedure would work, along with an accompanying form. We reviewed policy CBI, evaluation of the superintendent for goal setting. That also, right, will be coming before the board, so we can accept it, and we will have a clear policy on how the board performs this function. And then the fall policy update was released by the NHSBA based on the last legislative session. It is a robust update with, I think, 18 policies for consideration, 8 of them being required by law under review. So we are undertaking that work. We have a plan that we will be moving forward with. I think that's it.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, with that, we are on to old business and the upcoming community forum. With that, Alan, you have the floor.
And I will turn my microphone on. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Yep. First of all, I want to thank the school board members and the administration for the time, the thoughts, their input, and their expertise in moving this activity forward. It's been amazing to watch everybody come together. I'd also like to thank the Conval community for their time and their effort in learning about this community forum and completing the survey. You'll see in your package you have 3 documents. One is community forum activities. I'll talk about that later. Second one will be the presentations in the first hour. And the third one is survey results. I'd like to talk about the survey results now, so you can look in your packets and I'll go through it. The first thing to note is that in each category, there's a percent on each category. They do not add up to 100% or even close to 100%. So I looked at that and I said, what is going on with this? And I finally realized what it is. It's because each respondent could have logically selected more than one response in a category, and the percents are taken on each selection against the total number of respondents. So they could have selected 3 or 4 items within a category, and that's why the percentages add up the way they do. It doesn't make sense, but that's the way it is. There were 135 respondents. 92 or 84 will be attending, depending on how you look at the responses. The difference is that some say they're not attending, then say either attending by myself or attending with 2. It's not a big deal. It's a great attending response, and we are very close to the limit that we can have within the theater due to COVID restrictions. I believe the limit is about 90, 95, within that range. So we're very, very, very close to that. Okay. Now, the third category was which schools were attending. And you can see, and it's good to know that 18 of the 135 respondents do not have children in the school, which I thought was really nice because it shows that there is community interest whether or not they do have children within the school. Okay. Now, the most important category, topics for the forum. We initially said that we would have 4 topics selected for presentation within the first hour of the forum. Looked at them and we said, you know, how did they come out? The standout one, as we expected, is dealing with masking. 5 of the 6 remaining are very close to each other, which really shows a good diverse interest in what people want to see. So what we did is said, you know, there is 4, but 2 of them are very similar. Why don't we combine them into one presentation type, 2 presentations, but 1 question and answer period for the 2 presentations. So what we did is we combined the COVID masking and the protocols when students, staff test positive for COVID into one combined presentation. This allowed us to present 5 topics and stay reasonably close to the allotted time frame that we have. As you can see on one of your handouts, the topics that we will be doing will be masking and COVID-19 protocols when staff and students test positive. That will be the first one, and that will be with Tim and Kira presenting. Second topic that was chosen based on the ranking was changes in curriculum, and administration will be doing that. The third topic is, as we would figure would be, the budget, how is it paid for, and what happens to money not spent. And Jim will be doing that one, Jim Frederickson. Excuse me. The fourth topic was learning recovery plan, and administration will be doing that. So even though it looks like 4, there are 5 of the 7 choices that we are addressing for the forum within the first hour. Also, folks were given the opportunity to add a topic they thought was important. As you can see in your handout, there were 18 added. Basically, you know, one per person. There was only 3 of them that I saw that really could have been combined, and that had to do with the athletic fields. But what we're going to do with this is to be, even though they are not going to be presented within the first hour, we should be prepared to answer the questions on these within the second hour. Not to present, but to be able to ask questions, because these were the topics that people thought would be a good idea within the second hour, and that would be controlled by the moderator. We also asked to make it easier for parents to attend in person. We asked about childcare needs, and we received 7 yes responses, with 9 needing childcare. So we're gonna allow for the childcare thing to happen. Now, I also gave you within this handout the community forum activities. It's really a long list, which I have a habit of doing, of all the activities that we have done within planning for the community forum, and also activities that need to be done. The only reason I did this is that I would hope that folks would take a look at this, the school board administration, and make sure that we haven't missed any of the activities that should take place. I don't think we have. There's been an awful lot of things that have been done to make this forum successful, but if there's anything I seem to be missing, give me a yell. There's activities still remaining to be done, which would be, first of all, obtain commitment from the presenters, which we already have. The presenters to develop their presentations, which now that we know which ones are going to be, you have a whole week to do it. We're going to have to communicate to the respondents that in-person attendance is confirmed. What that means is that we told the people within the communication that went out with the survey, there is only a limited amount of space within the forum, and that we would communicate with them, because we did not know how many people would be attending. We would communicate with them that the space was available, and it was be on a first come, first served basis. Well, we don't need to do that, because there should be enough space in there. We're also going to have to let them know that, and I think we need a general correspondence on this, if folks show up that do not or have not responded that they're going to come to the forum, we're going to have to use, as Kimberly mentioned a little while ago, the overflow area. And that will be on the live stream. They will not have an opportunity with the live stream to interact with us, but at least they'll be able to view this. Let the community know the topics to be selected, firm up all the venue activities within the forum or for the forum, and then hold the forum. So those are the 3 handouts that I have. Is there any questions, any thoughts, any concerns? The forum is a go. There's been a lot of stuff going on with this thing, and it seems like it's all coming together.
Thank you for all the work from the Communications Committee and you, Alan, and board members that have contributed so far, and the administration. Catherine.
Well, I did want to thank Communications for putting this together. I know we talked about doing this for some time, so it is exciting to see it come together, and I am sorry that I can't be there for this. I did want to ask if there's a remote streaming option like this
It's
one.
a live stream.
A live stream option,
Live stream.
rather. Is there, for the people that show up, could they have an email with their phones or have some way to ask questions and then they could see the answers? Have a few from that audience? Is that possible?
We did not do that in the live stream for this particular forum because of not the technical complexities, but so many things going on at the same time, because we would have to actually set it up almost like a that we used to have before, not as a live stream, but they would have to interact.
I think Catherine's saying essentially they could text me.
Say it again?
As something as
A,
simple.
lo-
I
a
think
lot of people just allow someone to text a message or to email a message or to handwrite a message, and it goes from one room to the other, and they can ask a
sorry.
question
You meant
and get
from
an
the
answer.
overflow room.
For the overflow room,
Oh,
just
yeah.
so that they,
Sorry.
so some of those questions
I
can
thought
be
you meant
asked.
from the remote live stream.
No, from the-
Kimberly already
from-
brought that up. We'll
Yeah.
figure something out. For
I'm
the,
sorry, from the
I
overflow room.
apologize. I was just gonna tell him to at me on Twitter. But yeah, we can definitely figure out some way to make the folks in the overflow room be able to participate for
Yep.
sure. Sorry,
That'll make sense.
I misunderstood the
We
question.
can,
Or rotate some, ask
people
a
in and
row to move and bring the row in, and we'll figure it out.
We'll work through that.
Thank you. Don't at me on Twitter. Anyone else? Questions for Alan? Thank you, Alan. And others.
Yeah, I did a quick comment for Alan.
You bet, Jim.
We're all gonna present, I'm assuming we're all gonna use the same PowerPoint format. If you could send that out to everybody, so we could build on the same format.
I'll send you a link through slides, since everybody can access their Google Suite and may not have PowerPoint at home. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Slides. Okay. Thank you, Jim. All right. So with that, next is new business, occupational therapist justification. Kimberly.
Okay, so in your packet, you can see we're asking to decrease a certified occupational therapy assistant and increase an occupational therapist position. We have not been able to hire a certified occupational therapist assistant, not as a standalone position, not through contracted services. So we are asking that we increase that in order to make sure we can actually meet the current student needs that we have and also make it a attractive position.
I move that we accept the proposal to hire a certified occupational therapist.
I'll second that.
Moved by Catherine, second by Jerry. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nays. Abstentions. Hearing none, seeing none. The motion is approved. Next on your agenda is, there's a second position that's also in your packet, even though it's not listed on there, which is a registered nurse justification. Kimberly.
So this is due specifically to student medical needs. And we have new needs that we did not know were going to be coming into school. They are fairly significant, and it requires a full-time nurse to be present in the building as well as to have some nursing care on the bus in the afternoon. So we're looking for a part-time nurse to help cover that.
I move that we accept the proposal to add a registered nurse. What, was it 0.5?
0.5.
0.5.
Moved by Catherine, second by Kevin. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries. The position is approved. With that, we are on to expenditures and encumbrances. Lori.
Okay, so the report was included in the packet. You can see that we've got a little bit of cleanup work. We're still, we're finalizing this week, the new payroll positions and movement between, where people were last year and where they're assigned for this year. So then I can run encumbrances and see what my true numbers are for buildings, and then I can make appropriate budget transfer requests. I didn't want to do that until I had those, positions, in the right account and right
building levels. It's mostly building levels. But then there were some other items that after we prepared the budget, we, I think if you'll recall, we had a few budget transfers during the course of the year where we shifted into appropriate functions or object codes, and that needs to be translated into this year as well because it was done after the budget process. And so it's just a matter of nailing down some time with the appropriate people to be able to pull all that together for the next board meeting for budget transfer requests.
Thank you, Lori.
I move that we accept the encumbrance report, expense and encumbrance report as presented.
Second.
Moved by Catherine, second by Dick. Discussion. Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries. Okay, with that, we are on to budget guidance. Jim, you're up. Dr. Forrest, could you unmute your mic and put it towards the faceless board member on the phone? All yours, Jim.
Okay, so back on August 17th, we reviewed what I called the preliminary budget guidance. And there were four major bullet points on that. I'm going to kind of briefly review three of them just to remind you. The fourth, which we'll probably need more discussion on, is the actual decisions we need to make. So the first topic that we talked about was assumptions and conditions. One of the assumptions was that we would continue with our planned preschool expansion. That the second one was that learning recovery would not be included in the budget because that's funded by other dollars. We also stated that the capital improvement bond would not happen until March 23, not March of 22. And the fourth one was just a reminder that there is an ongoing negotiation on the new collective bargaining agreement, which, as you all know, is subject to approval by the voters under a separate warrant article. So no salary and wage increases are to be included in the budget preparation itself. That's handled actually by the negotiation. Okay. The second topic, as a reminder, was we talked about major variables, and there's two major variables we identified. One was the unknown and rising labor and material cost escalation. One of the things we did talk about at the meeting was the fact that for a lot of you probably already know that the consumer price index is greater than 5%, I think 5.3, 5.4% this year. So the costs that are out there are real. There is some question, though, in a lot of people's mind in terms of how long those will last, whether they'll be temporary or not. But we're facing higher costs for a lot of things. The unknown, and we still won't know probably until after we get the October 1st data, is the impact of the FY22 enrollment on state revenue. But maybe Kimberly, you want to comment on that? I mean, enrollment looks like it's up a little bit, but I don't know if you want to comment on that or just wait another week or two.
No, I would rather just wait until we have our final enrollment numbers in, and also so I can touch base with Caitlin Davis at the DOE regarding adequacy dollars. Okay, good. The third topic that we're not going to elaborate on is the budget schedule, and we talked there about the final guidance having a September 7th board vote. We obviously didn't make that, but we're going to talk about it tonight. We should vote on it tonight. And then we also set a deadline of November 6th, of Saturday, for the annual budget workshop, which will see the first look at the results of the guidance. So with that in mind, there are several decisions we need to make. The first one of which was the last time I talked about remote learning program, and the fact that we made a decision not to include remote learning. Seems to me that we've revisited that tonight. So we're going to need to have Kimberly include some sort of provisions for us for remote learning in the budget. Does everybody concur with that? And I'm going to ask for kind of consensus if I can, Tim, and then we can maybe take a vote or discussion later. I don't know how you want it to proceed.
Sure.
I don't think we want to vote on each one individually, but maybe I should finish and then we can have a talk.
Why don't you do that?
Okay. Okay, so the second one was talking about the capital improvement funding, and I think there's a number of us that are concerned that we're not spending enough in the budget on capital improvements. We've got a lot on the plate. Tim has recently sent us his updated look at the next couple of years. I have not had a chance to look at it. We haven't really shared it with the whole budget property committee. But the fact of the matter is that costs have gone up. So we will be sharing that with everybody. But having said that, Catherine suggested that good financial planning would suggest that we set a target as a percentage of the proposed gross budget for capital spending. So the number that we talked about, and Catherine can verify this, was something like 2% of the total budget, and we've been spending in the budget itself less than 1%. So that's a subject we're going to need to talk about and provide Kimberly funding for. I like the idea of 2%. I'll go through the numbers when we get to that in a second here. And the final thing we had a lot of discussion on was to provide Kimberly with a target for the total increase. And we talked about three different numbers. One is the 0% increase in the total budget. This is total operational budget. Another one is a 2% increase. Another one is a 4% increase. Now that's a simple mathematical calculation. And Kimberly, if you have those numbers, you can share them, or I can share what I have in front of me. And then we can have a discussion on that, because I'd like to suggest a change to that. Do you have the numbers, Kimberly?
Yes, so the operating budget this year is $51,846,076. So a 0% increase would clearly be $51 million. 2% increase, well, right, but that
I think you misspoke, Kimberly. It was 51,146 is the total I had. Is that correct?
Lori?
I think you misspoke. The total operating budget, including warrant articles 1 and 2, was 51,146 million.
Can you?
So the total budget number that she is providing, that I provided, is the 51,846,076, and that includes funding of the trusts. It's what is in our
Gotcha.
budget at
Okay,
this stage.
fine.
Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to use your numbers?
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Okay, 2% would be an increase of $1,036,922. I used round numbers, Jim, and representing $52,882,998 budget. 4% would be represent a $2,073,843 increase, representing a budget of $919,919. So that would be the base 0 to 4% increase.
And for the sake of everybody to share my thoughts on that, the issue I think I have with doing it that way is that the collective bargaining agreement, which is being negotiated right now, we don't know what the number is going to end up at, is going to be subject of a separate warrant article. As you all know, there are also a lot of contractual obligations we have, like transportation. There are other costs such as debt service, interest, and principal that are fixed that we really can't do anything about. So my suggestion is that we provide a target. 0, 2, and 4% seem appropriate to Kimberly, but to apply those targets to the part that we can really manage and control. For instance, stationery and capital improvement, stuff like that. Because it just makes more sense to talk about what we can control versus what we can't control. It provides a more realistic assessment, I think, of what we're able to do, and it also allows us to start from day one on how we communicate the increase. Because, as you know, the collective bargaining agreement is going to be a separate warrant article. So that was my thought. Kimberly, after our discussion Friday. And Dick and I talked about that briefly this morning too, before I realized I could attend this.
Thank you, Jim.
So I did a quick calculation, and if you take, and Lori and Kimberly would obviously have to validate this, but roughly half of the total operating cost would be taken out. For instance, using the numbers that Lori provided last year when we calculated the $847,000 increase in the warrant Article 2 for the collective bargaining agreement, that was $24 million right there. You add transportation and whatnot. So roughly half of the total operating budget would be not subject to anything we could make a decision on, because we either have or will have contractual obligations. So if a simple way of looking at it is just take the numbers that Kimberly cited, the increase she cited, and cut them in half. If you're looking at raw dollars, but I think it might be more meaningful anyway, just to talk about increases of 0%, 2%, and 4%. The other thing that we talked about in the meeting, and Kevin, this is your opportunity if you'd like to say something, is do we want to add any kind of criteria in terms of classroom size constraints? And of course that gets into another area which might be more appropriate to talk about in the strategic plan than here, but I want to make sure everybody was aware we did have that conversation. So I think that the bottom line, there's three things we need to talk about. Do we want to include dollars have Kimberly include some dollars for remote learning? Do we want to have her come up with a capital improvement plan to express its percent of the budget, like 2% is the appropriate number? And then what kind of increase do we want to talk about? So that's all I have to say. It's open to discussion at this point, I think, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Catherine?
Jim, can you hear us okay? We just want to clarify, and I won't misspeak for everyone in the room, I'll speak for myself, that the remote option is not something on the table. So we don't need to talk about that in the budget guidance. We approve money for this year for homebound children. This isn't something that we're going into the next budget cycle with. Am I correct? Can we shake our heads?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Shaking our head, Jim.
Did you hear Catherine?
Can you see us?
He can see us. Is there a delay?
Jim, can you?
There's absolutely a delay, so you can shake your head, but I won't see it for a minute.
Okay. But did you hear what Catherine said?
I hear you in real time, and I understand what she said, and I agreed. But I felt that after the discussion today, I had to bring it up again just to make sure we're on the same page. Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jim. Next, so your next question that you want the board to consider is whether or not you want us to include in our instructions a minimum percentage or a target percentage for capital improvement.
That's exactly right. And if Catherine, I think you suggested 2% is an appropriate number. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? What do you think is appropriate for an organization that has a budget this size?
Catherine.
Thank you, Tim. Sure, Jim. So any capital plan requires you to spend monies all from different sources, although all of it will ultimately come from taxation. So there's bonding, lease purchases, there are taxation direct, and pay as you go. So organization usually that's hit the $30 million mark usually starts to set percentage targets to make sure that they're maintaining whatever facilities that they're responsible for as a government entity. So the bottom threshold would be probably in the 2% range, the top threshold usually in the 5% range, so that you're paying as you're going, because everything isn't bondable. I mean, at some point we can't bond everything. So identifying those projects, and it's a target, and then you pair out the projects that you're going to be able to include into the budget and then you put them in. So it doesn't mean that we'll necessarily hit that target one way or the other, but it's a target that we would try to strive for so that we can maintain our facilities, as our capital long-term plan is pretty robust, and the bond that we would need is also rather large. So this is another way to chunk it out and do it in smaller pieces and different financial tools at our disposal.
Thank you, Catherine. So Jim, is the suggestion that we ask the district to essentially prepare three, one that's at 0, one that's at 2, and one that's at 4? Is that what you want? Is that not what you were saying? No, I'm trying to make sure I understood.
No. What we talked about was having 3 different options, and I think Kimberly, based on prior discussions you and I have had, and I think we talked in public too, is that maybe picking 2 of them would not be unreasonable to ask you to bring to us in November. And I personally don't think that 0% that makes any sense whatsoever. So that would leave us with 2 and 4% increases applied. 2 and 4% increases applied to the part we can manage would be my suggestion. We obviously have the opportunity after November 5th, whatever the date is, to change and have a discussion and change accordingly. But
Mr. Dunning.
I'd like to make a motion that we give guidance to the superintendent to build a 2% increase off the present operating budget, which does not include contractual agreement, and bring that to us for our okay.
Second.
Moved by Dick, second by Catherine. Additional discussion. Rich.
I would just want to point out that the past argument that's been offered for why budgets should be falling is that student enrollment's been falling and no longer is. That's point 1. And point 2, that the CPI is around 5%. So when you're talking about a 2% increase, you are talking about programmatic cuts. And I just want us to be clear about that.
Thank you, Rich. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor of the motion aiming for a 2% proposal? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I show 2 in opposition. Abstentions? Thank you. Kimberly.
So I just want to be clear that that's 2% on the entire operating budget, not 2% on on $10 million.
The motion I heard from Mr. Dunning was against the operating budget.
Okay.
Is that the sense of what the room heard as well? Thank you. Because that's always separate.
I thought you said, Dick, contractual commitments.
No, operating budget. Correct. The last ones from last year are in there, so that's exactly why 0 isn't 0.
So 2% on the total operating budget, 2% of the 51.84 minus the collective bargaining agreement.
Not including the collective bargaining agreement.
Minus the collective bargaining agreement, or not including?
No, that's a separate.
Right. I just want to be.
That's separate.
Right, but it's important that we. Brenda, can you read the motion, please?
Sure. Well, so I just changed it to reflect the new language, but what I originally had was that Dick moved to give. The motion that I originally had was that Dick Dunning moved to give guidance to the superintendent to build a 2% increase into the present operating budget, which does not include, what was the word that he used originally? Contractual obligations. But then since that, we've made some clarification that it does not include the collective bargaining agreement.
Right. So we voted on verbiage that excluded contractual obligations, which would include collective bargaining agreement and such things as transportation. That's why I'm bringing it up. So there's a misunderstanding, and I think there's a misunderstanding in terms of what we voted on here. So I think we need to be very clear and concise on this.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, I'll clarify what I meant. You're going to have obligations that are going to happen with collective bargaining. That would then be added to this operational 2% increase. So when I said not including contractual agreement, it means any other agreements come along, you don't deduct it from this in your operation funding. Is that making sense to you? You're going to have a CVA contract at some point. What I'm saying is you just don't then deduct that from what I just said was a 2% increase on the operating budget to bring it down. Does that clarify it?
Perfect.
Yes, I understand it, that I am not including the CBA, which will be a separate warrant article.
Correct.
So how much of a dollar increase are you going to budget? You're going to build to, Kimberly, in raw dollars?
Well, she told us that
2%
earlier.
She told you that earlier.
1,846.
Hold on.
My understanding is I would budget a 2% increase to the last year's operating budget of 51 million, or this year's operating budget of $51,846,076, which equals a potential increase of $1,036,922.
Okay. So then in reality then, on top of that, we all know that there's going to be an increase in the collective bargaining agreement.
Correct.
And that's gonna, who knows what the number of that is going to be. Even if I could guess, I'm not allowed to say right now, but that is going to bring us up obviously higher than a 2%, which is probably appropriate. So I just want to make clear that we all understood what we voted on. I wasn't clear until I asked the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Rich.
Jerry, do you have a timeline on when you think that might be? Yeah.
Well, I would say within the next month, we should.
What was your question, Dick? A timeline on what?
The question was, Rich was asking a question whether it was a timeline on negotiations, and Jerry's answer was within the next month.
To maybe month and a half.
Month and a half.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, Rich.
the reason I ask is because we have staff who are not under that contract that we probably do want the 2% budget to include some increase for, right? Non-bargaining unit staff. So is that in or out? That's in? Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else on budget guidance? Thank you, Jim, for dialing in. Oh, sorry, Dr. Kriebel, go ahead.
Did we make a decision about capital improvements in the budget?
That wasn't included as part of the motion.
Just checking.
You are welcome to add such a motion if you would like to do so. Okay. Hearing none, seeing none. Anything else on budget guidance? All right. With that, legislative update. One isn't legislative, it's technically regulatory, and we already touched upon that. That is that the New Hampshire Department of Education is looking to modify two of the education regulations, one at 306.22, the other at 306.18, that would actually prohibit us from offering remote instruction without the expressed option of exercise by a parent. The other thing you should know, Kimberly and I went through, I'm going to get them wrong, the legislative service requests. Is that the right? How'd I do? We went through a pile of those, about 200 of those. Again, these aren't bills. Some of them will turn into bills, but about 200 of the ones that we looked at will have some type of direct impact on public education or this district as an employer, as an entity. There's voting stuff that would potentially impact our the towns who conduct our elections, those types of things as well. So obviously, as we do, this will be a standing agenda item that we will update you as that stuff continues to move down the road. But there are no shortage of them. They only have titles now, so we're assuming based on those titles what they get to. But again, there are no shortage of them that would be a direct impact on the district. Any other non-listed agenda items that you would like to discuss this evening? Or on the legislative update? Thank you, Catherine,
Right.
yes.
So, yeah, so the LSRs were only filed by the House of Representatives so far. The Senate has not filed their titles. That will happen next month, so
Thank you.
you could be looking for even more. Of the 858 filed, there is over 200 now. There was more added today.
Thanks.
That affect education. In addition, tomorrow, the House Education Subcommittee are going to hold a session because there were retained bills from last legislative session. So House Bill 257, prohibiting political advocacy in public schools. House Bill 234, relative to freedom of speech and association. House Bill 422, relative to the 1/2 credit course required in the United States and New Hampshire government and civics. House Bill 339, establishing a committee to study air quality in schools. House Bill 267, relative to construction standards for schools. And House Bill 214, relative to school building grants. There is no ability to participate remotely. However, some committees are live streaming, so there's a link on the General Court website, but I can't guarantee that this one will be live streaming. So, if you want to look at that. So this is the basically the only chance for these retained bills to move forward into the next legislative session, and we want to watch what those bills were, as well as the LSRs, because some of that old legislation can come back.
Thank you, Catherine. Questions? All right. Anything else for the good of the order before we go into the next period of public comment? All right. With that, we are now at our second period of public comment. If you have not already addressed the board and would like to do so tonight, please raise your hand, and the chair will recognize you. Hearing none, seeing none. Thus ends the next period of public comment. We are on to the approval of manifests.
All right, so I certify manifest,
I would like to excuse the administrator.
Sorry, Lori.
okay. So I certify that manifests totaling $3,066,394 have been reviewed by me and found to be proper charges against Kentucky Valley School District for goods and or services received and have been properly processed prior to their submittal to the school board.
I move we approve the manifest as presented.
Moved by Dick, second by Kira. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Manifests are approved. Thank you very much. Non-public? Yes? Okay, 4? Negotiations? And personal, all of them? Hey, all of them. It's a trifecta tonight.
Hey, Tim, can I make a quick comment?
You can. The chair recognizes the gentleman currently in Florida.
So Rich Cahoon mentioned that his concern about the non-CVA members. If I did this math correctly, we just authorized Kimberly to put her budget that would increase by $1,037,000. And that is not going to apply to the 24 some odd million associated with the collective bargaining agreement people. That in effect means she's got 3.74% to apply to everything else. Okay? And that's kind of the same result, almost the same result as if we applied 4% to all the contractual items. So we end up in the same place.
Yeah, I got this. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
I move we go into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, for the topics of negotiations, legal, and personnel.
Second.
Moved by Catherine to enter non-public, second by Dick. Tim? We'll take a 2-minute break, finish the roll call, and then we'll take a quick break. I don't expect any other additional public items other than sealing the minutes and if needed, and adjourning the meeting.
So we discussed that, so, when we developed DEDA, on the policy, there was really good discussion, should we that, or should not. And so one option is again, was that the first public comment period could be limited to the agenda. The second public comment period, you earned it by hanging out the entire meeting and could say, whatever you want. That was the discussion.